So last but not least, we'll talk about the acquisition aspects, and Bryan, we'll turn it over to you.
And I'll even promise that I'll be trying to be the quickest one. You know, we went in with some fundamental constructs, and needless to say, it was a very animated discussion. And I want to thank all the people that contributed. We both had software vendors and hardware vendors in there, and I think begin with the end in mind. Policy and process equals time. Time kills everything. Okay, if you can't fit into a mobile cycle, don't bother. So all the certifications, STIG, HSP 12, FIPS, etc. If you can't fit into a mobile cycle, by the way, which is less than a year these days, much less than a year, you're nowhere. In many cases we talked about some of the barriers, and this is really where we kind of drove it. But some of the processes, if we even had certain representatives from hardware manufacturers talking about the accreditation process, the policies don't align, okay? And getting common agreement, it's incumbent upon us to try and get that agreement, and that's very difficult. The next thing we talked about was the stresses on P&Ls. Most of the people ultimately have to forecast numbers to upper level management, and I think Jeff summarized it best, where it's like, we like predictable and reliable, and sometimes some of the things the government does, violates the rules of nature and the rules of business. And when it does that, it's generally a 10x factor. You say COTS, but in reality you want GOTS. You have a capital allocation model where build it and then potentially I'll sign a contract with you. That's a very, very tough sell. Especially when you look at the federal budget. There's it is the #1 priority, but it appears almost nowhere as a line item in the budget in any agency. So all of those types of things make it very, very difficult for us to go to bat, to be advocates for you, to say, hey, let's build it to this specification, etc., as we move forward. And we'll go to the next slide. So this one, we missed the second one, which actually probably had one of the more animated. But we talked about ecosystems. And I would say understanding mobile math is probably one of the greatest recommendations. How it gets monetized, I know it looks interesting at $1.99 on a commercial app store, but how those apps get monetized, how the software that runs on it, although a PC we will spend thousands of dollars to secure it, to monitor it, etc. The same thing holds true, and even sometimes the paradigm is more complex. Stop some of the science projects. We'll have 50, 60 pilots going on all across the federal government, and in reality, minimum viable product, you're losing out on some of the innovation. Everybody wants to replicate what happens in the valley, but you lose out on some of the innovation when you put a lot of policy and process around it in reality. Stop thinking one and done. FOC is kind of a moving target. I know that sounds crazy because projects have a start and an end, but in many cases some of these things are becoming digital products and they have a life unto themselves, responding to your users. And the last thing is inter-agency trust. We came with a few examples. Okay, get those types of issues sorted out, because unfortunately mobility crosses multiple domain barriers, and a lot of people working together in ways they've never imagined before. And generally speaking, we tend to trip on all of those little hot button items, those deep political issues, things like that. It's incumbent upon the government to try and work those issues out to help us help you. And that's it. I tried to be the quickest.
Any questions for Bryan?
I have a question.
Yep.
So I want to make sure that I understand what you said about innovation and not restricting it, but also not being completely unconstrained and spending all your money on projects that are not even viable.
Right.
And so when I think of a playground that does not have a fence around it, children play at the building. Mm-hmm. When it has a fence around it, people play at the fence. So what we're really looking for is an innovation framework where, like the starfish and the spider, you try to kill it. It people will move around. You chop a starfish into a million bits, you're going to get a million starfish. There is an underground thing that it's going to occur. We have to acknowledge it. So in terms of an innovation framework, trying to think about how we can encourage good innovation. We can't be so good at killing bad ideas that we kill things that are not interesting to the most senior people. But how would we have an innovation framework?
Wow, that's a very large question, but I think one of the simplest things, and I'll let a couple of the others that join, understanding that accepting failure, okay? Also appreciating the fact that while it may not perfectly meet a particular situation or set of circumstances, that innovation unto itself is a process, okay? And getting there is, start with the business problem and get everybody crystal clear on what the problem is you're trying to solve, and then let's look at unorthodox ways to fix it, as opposed to trying to, pigeonhole it into a very rigid, what I would say, stage gate. And I think innovation in this case is, is it perfectly secure? Okay, well, probably not. Okay, is it perfectly, certified? No, it's probably not going to be, because those all take time and money. And I'll let a couple of the others that were on the panel also speak to it. Jeff, I know you have an opinion.
Yeah, so I think I've been asked this question a couple different times by folks in government. I mean, they look to Silicon Valley companies and say, you guys, lots of innovation. So how do you generate innovation? Generate innovation by giving people the ability to express themselves and then get rewarded for that, and get noticed for that, and have it be notoriety. Otherwise, it's just a science project. So long as we keep doing science projects with our government and don't figure out how to get them to market and monetize them and make them successful and give the recognition to the people who came up with the bright ideas, we don't have innovation, we have science projects. So I think that's the biggest thing that we have to figure out how to do, is how do we get that recognition into government, whether that's monetary or press or whatever, to make those people want to innovate and then be successful through that, because there are all kinds of cool ideas, but if they get so buried down in process, procedure, and never see the light of day and never get actually executed, it's just a science project, it's not innovation.
And I'll even take a step of that. We even brought it up as a topic, the Washington Post syndrome. Okay, and that is, from a liability perspective, is this going to, if we take a step out there, is it going to end up on the front page of the Washington Post if it doesn't go smoothly? Okay, those are all real-world calculus. It all figures into a math equation as we try and do these types of things.